Hey, Emma,
Yes, Malin.
what do you yell out when a gal pal of yours is totally monopolizing the party with a game with a stick where you bend over backwards and you gotta get her out of there?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Banisher Limbo! Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your... I can't hear the word limbo without thinking about the song they would play when I worked on a pirate ship and they would do Limbo every kid's cruise, host Madelyn.
I'm your back from the dead host, Emma.
Oh yeah, which one of us is the ghost and which one of us is alive on this episode?
I think with my voice, I am the ghost.
Emma's doing a voice just for the show, to be clear.
No, I'm a little sick, live at noon on Sunday, so I do apologize for a little bit of a weird voice this episode.
It's fitting, I think,
Yeah.
for our spooky Halloween episode.
Yeah, spooky month. It's spooky month.
Spooky Halloween month that Emma didn't pick on purpose. There's no oversight to her hat picking. She could be curating for all we know.
I don't. That's all.
Well, you might as well have, because this week we're talking about Limbo, and we're talking about Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden. Hence,
That's right.
something that could be plausibly called a joke or perhaps a riddle at the top of the episode, featuring both those titles.
Yeah.
Plausibly.
But first we're talking about Limbo first.
That's right, the video game.
One of the true harbingers of, maybe you still have a vendetta against them, but I feel like there was like a segment of the podcast where you had your vendetta against like atmospheric platformers.
Did I have a vendetta against atmospheric platformers?
Or
Really?
you just like, maybe it was just sort of like abstract storytelling in general. You had you were like, I hate it.
It's a little pretentious.
Yeah, I think that was it.
I'll still own that opinion. But Limbo, if you're not familiar with it, it's a 2010, moody, spooky, slightly, macabre, platform side-scrolling physics puzzler, from Danish studio Playdead, originally published by Microsoft, originally an exclusive on Xbox, on the, one of the Xbox Live Arcade pioneers. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But now you can play it wherever you want to play it. And in fact, nope, you've probably missed it. If you go back in time, you could have gotten this for like $1 on the Nintendo Switch, but I think the sale ended like at 3 a.m. this morning.
Oops. Oh well.
But I got it for $1 on the Nintendo Switch.
That's good.
So I broke my streak of, I feel like I haven't, that's not true. I guess it's only been a couple of podcasts in a row where I haven't played any of the games. Because I did Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Yeah.
So I played, like, somewhere between a third and a half of Limbo.
I think if you don't die too much, it's really only about an hour long, so it's a pretty short.
Well, I've already played it for about an hour, so thanks, Emma.
I was just looking at long plays where they don't die very much and they're like an hour-ish,
Well, unfortunately, that's not the point. Because the philosophy of this game, the developers have described it as, instead of trial and error, trial and death. You are expected to die a lot in this game.
Yeah.
There's not that much to... Okay, whatever. Here's my, this is a little pretentious story summary. There's not that much to describe in the story. You're a spooky, maybe ghost boy, making your way through a spooky film noir, German expressionist, gory, with an E, inspired landscape. And apparently, although nothing in the first hour of the game makes this clear, it's really only the tagline of the game that expresses that this is what you're doing. Apparently, you're trying to figure out what's up with your sister. Trying to figure out where's your sister.
And I feel like you can probably surmise, based on the title of the game, that this is some sort of afterlife situation.
Although, man, a lot of contemporary reviews and even retrospective reviews go to great lengths to be like, limbo is a concept in Christianity derived from the Latin limbus. And I'm like, don't we all just understand what the word limbo means? Like,
no, I don't think so, necessarily.
It's just like being in limbo, not necessarily in the afterlife sense.
Sure, I guess. But, I mean, in terms of, like, specific Christianity things, I have been reminded on some occasions that because I went to church as a child, a lot of Christian-type Bible story knowledge is stuff that I take for granted that people don't actually know about if they're not church-going.
Limbo was not something that, like, came up in our church experience.
I'm just saying.
Very often,
I'm just playing devil's advocate here, okay?
Well, do people know what the devil is, Emma? Just kidding. I just thought it was funny that like almost every review is like, let me give you a paragraph and a half about the Christian underpinnings of the word limbo. And I was like, I really thought that the idea of like, like that project's kind of in limbo right now, had transcended that. But, you know.
You're right. The true meaning of the game Limbo is that the boy is really trying to get a game made.
That's right.
That's what it is.
And it's true that when you do that, you sometimes get brutally stabbed by spider legs.
Yeah, I think that's what they do at Ubisoft sometimes, yeah.
They throw people into bear traps. Anyway, it's a short game, which we'll talk about later, probably, the fact that it's short. And ultimately, what you do throughout most of it, it's, you know, one of these genres of games where the developer was like, how few buttons can you use?
Yeah.
Right? So you move left and right, you can jump, and you can grab things, and that's it. And so you have to use things in your environment to make it past various environmental hazards, including bear traps, including killer spiders, including... there's a portion that I played through where it's like, you're wrapped up in spider silk, so you're like basically a hopping little mummy guy, which is very fun in Halloween. And I just stopped when I get brainworms for the first time.
Woohoo.
So, look forward to more on that next week, probably.
More brainworms next week?
Well, yeah. 6-week recap, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, the first half of the game is apparently pretty, like, scripted events, sort of, that you have to puzzle out. And then the second half is a little bit more, like, open-ended sort of puzzles that you figure out on your own time. There's a few less angry children coming at you.
Yeah, a lot of angry little boys that I am killing.
Well, you know, sometimes they do it to themselves.
Deaths. Stupid angry little boys who get crushed by things that I have figured out.
Sometimes they're chasing you and they don't make a jump, and that's kind of their fault.
That is kind of their fault. But
or they run into some water and they clearly don't know how to swim.
They don't seem to have the same, you know, benevolent God placing them back at the checkpoint that I do.
Exactly.
So what does that say?
They don't have the glowing eyes of the player, right?
Right. Well, Jesus is watching out for me. I do have to call out my favorite thing to call out that I feel like I have not gotten to do for a game that we've talked about in a little while is that Limbo does have a place on my favorite page on Wikipedia. Say it with me, kids. The Wikipedia greatest games of all time list.
Woo.
You're not a kid.
Yeah, I figured it was there.
It was, alongside Heavy Rain from that year.
Oh, from that year? I was like, alphabetically. Wow.
No. Just like alongside here. Let me give you just for the greatest games of all time. Let me give you the other ones from this year, just so we situate it in time here. And hey, maybe throw some of them in the hat. From 2010. Wow, there are a lot of greatest games of all time from 2010. You ready?
I'm ready.
Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Civilization 5, correct. Fallout New Vegas. God of War 3. Heavy Rain. Limbo, Mass Effect 2, Red Dead Redemption, Rock Band 3, StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty, Super Mario Galaxy 2, Super Meat Boy, and Xenoblade Chronicles.
Is Inside on that list, out of curiosity? Played its other games?
Inside does appear in 2016.
I think a lot of people prefer Inside to
Well, Inside takes a lot of the
Limbo.
things they couldn't like finish for this and then does them, right?
Yeah. And their latest game, which they did release some art for this year, so it is still currently being developed, is like an open world game. Which is
weird.
Just like,
that's so different.
Yeah. I mean, they've been saying for a while it's going to be way bigger than their previous two games, but yeah, it seems like it's way, way bigger.
Well, speaking of being big or small, as you may have guessed from its inclusion on Definitive Games ranking source, the Wikipedia Greatest Games of All Time list, Limbo was like quite critically acclaimed when it came out, and also quite commercially successful. It was the third best-selling game on Xbox Live Arcade that year. It made millions of dollars. It was an Xbox exclusive for like a year, and then they sent it elsewhere so they could make more money, right? And it was ultimately, only developed by like 16 people if you include all the freelancers who worked on it, right? It's a tiny team. They made enough money to buy their company back from their investors. Good stuff. But because we can't have nice things, this is also a game that got a lot of like about it being short and the short length versus the price. Now, guess what this game cost? $15. And everyone was like, $15? Now, I'm over here. If it had been $15, I might not have bought it because I bought it the day before I had to play it to record this at like midnight. So I could play it for an hour the next day in the morning. And if it had been $15, I might have made the judgment call that I might not have time. And because it was like $1.50, I said, okay, even if I don't play this, no big deal.
I mean, that's the price of a movie ticket back then, probably, right?
Let's be a little generous that maybe movie tickets cost a little bit less than $15 in 2010. I think they did.
Don't they? I just bought one. I don't remember how much it was, but I think it was like $20.
Sure. But I am pretty sure that like you could see, unlike in New York City where I don't think you even can do this anywhere, you could see a movie for less than $15 in 2010.
Sure, a prime time. It's a prime time movie ticket.
Sure, maybe a Friday night movie ticket would cost you $15 in 2010. We were buying movie tickets in 2010, so the fact that we can't remember this just means that we have brain worms, not that we literally don't know the answer. But, people who track their budgets more carefully than us, let us know.
The RFK Jr. stuff has traumatized me. I can't joke about brain worms anymore. They're real.
Right, I forgot that he has those.
They could be eating your brain. God.
Yes, and in Limbo they do.
There could be dead worms in your brain.
The more the merrier.
I don't have any.
I say. Maybe it would be good for me if there were a few more worms in my brain. Anyway, though, that became a little bit of a flashpoint for this kind of like generation of indie developers. And they organized a Size Doesn't Matter Day, which is itself sort of indicative of like a different era of like game culture.
In a way, the same, though. We just morphed to, I want smaller games with worse graphic for people who paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding,
no,
Sonic.
I was meaning the effort being a like silly, boyish double entendre.
Oh, okay. Fair enough,
what I meant. The tone of it.
Sure.
And several of the articles like being like direct plays on that. And like the recap article that on Rock Paper Shotgun that I read, having like the crossed out segment about genitalia in the article instead of just letting us like obviously understand that that's the joke. Anyway, like a bunch of people wrote like op-eds making that point about films and books and whatever. And yeah, like, can't we get over ourselves? Oh, I don't know. It'd be one thing if it was $50, right? The like, oh, I'm paying $50 for a 3-hour game. I understand the like, well, that's not what I would pay for a movie element of it, perhaps. But it makes me so frustrated when it's about a game that's like, no, like, there are plenty of other 2-hour experiences for which you pay $15 and you might roll your eyes a little bit, but not that much. Mm-hmm. Like, come on.
I read like a Rock Paper Shotgun retrospective of like two people arguing over
that was so funny. What's wrong with these men?
I was reading it I know people still do like debate formats like this today, right? Where it's like one person's on one side and one's on the other side. But I was like, if I was in this room, I would be a little scared. I feel like they're like arguing.
It was reminiscent, that sort of viral one where like the guy like hates Yakuza 1 and the other guy's like, you're an idiot, basically. I can't remember, it's in some magazine. Yeah, I know, these guys really don't seem to like each other. It gets like unusually profane.
Yeah.
Like, I did really like, there was one thing that did make me feel sort of seen here. A quote that I saved from that one that I did want to read, so I'm glad you read this anyway. So two guys named Kieran and John. Right, and Kieran, like, really, really, really hates it, and John likes it. And Kieran says, I sort of suspected I'd hate it from the second I jumped off the first log, and it kills you for it. Prick, I think, at the designer. John, I'm not aware of a point where you die in that way. Kieran, go to the first log and jump off of it. If you fall, you're fine. If you jump off it, you die because you fall just too far. It's a designer who finds that kind of thing funny. This exact thing happened to me. That was the end of the quote, to be clear. Funny was the end of the quote. Madelyn says, this exact thing happened to me. I jumped off the log, I died, I was like, what? And then I fell off of it, and I was like, I was fine. I was like, that sucks.
That feels more like a oversight to me than like a malicious thing, to be honest.
Okay.
I read some interviews, like, they show, like, how their physics works in the background, and it's like, oh my god, there's so many lines on screen in this screenshot that they've shared. Where was this? It was like an IGN interview with them. So, and yeah, they show like this hotel thing, and there's like thousands of yellow, green, and blue lines everywhere. So I do wonder if that was just like a oops thing or
here's
not.
the thing though. Here's my response to that. So with the caveat of physics engine sounds really complicated, maybe not as easy to fix as you would think. There's no way it's an oversight. The first thing you want to do when you get to that log is jump off of it. So they would be away. There's no way that anyone play tested this game and weren't like, oh, like 3/4 of players are jumping to their death.
Do you think they play tested this game?
Somebody has to have. Microsoft published it.
That's fair. You're right.
So did just want to, just sort of feel like if it wasn't going to be intentional, feels like they could have lowered the height of the log by just like an inch and you wouldn't have died.
True enough. I guess it is also, perhaps it's there intentionally to teach you a lesson or set the tone.
Yeah.
As well.
I didn't immediately
It does teach you that there is fall damage.
Yeah, it does. No, it's, death is a lesson in this game, right? And it certainly teaches you a lesson. And then I did not have the reaction of this very militantly angry RPS
I'm sure it's
guy
played up. It's played up for the aesthetic of the piece. But,
is it?
That's what I'm choosing to believe.
There seems to be some real animosity here.
But also in that they talked a little bit about like, because I was reflecting on like some recent-ish like trends of think pieces on like FromSoft games and sort of like the comedy of death in that. And they touched a little bit on this piece too of the one guy really was like, oh, the developer's laughing at us, right? Or whatever. And like, it's interesting to see that perspective be like, and I hate that versus like, I feel like the common sort of critical reception of that is like, yeah, and it's funny.
Don't make me bring up Barth is another like iconic quote from that interview.
But it's definitely, I read some things reflecting on like it's scary at times, but also some things that were like, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of some dark humor in the fact that you drag these little children's corpses around to make a way across the water.
Like, perhaps. If you've decided it's funny, the game does not, like, prompt that from you.
I don't know. I watched one of the little boys with sticks just run into the water, and then you jump on top of him over, and there's something very, like, Shaun of the Dead about that. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't. I hated it. No, I see what you mean, but I don't know. I think that you have to like be wanting to interpret it that way. your character gets like murdered in gruesome, and like as gruesome as it can be, like for this graphic style.
That's fair. For most of the footage I watched, they did not die very often. So yeah, I did not get as much of that. So perhaps that would have impacted the tone for me a little bit. My tone was like, there's just sort of this like very passive boy, making his way downtown.
I think that something that impacts that for me, though, is that I have accidentally walked into the water just like that boy, like half a dozen times at least.
Fair enough.
So I was like, these boys are just like me for real. Like, I, too, had to, like, jump through this, like, smashy thing to figure out what the pressure point was 7 different times before I managed it. How on earth could they figure it out the first time?
Well, you're not... do you think you'll finish it before next week?
I probably only have another hour, so I'll try, yeah.
Then I will ask Madelyn for her interpretation of the ending next week.
Yeah, look forward to it.
We can hear her take on what limbo means overall.
Gello. I have another fun quip from an interview with the 2 lead developers.
Sure.
They said that... So, they for a while they were trying to do it themselves, and then eventually I think Microsoft like made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Sounds like there was like a bidding war between Sony and Microsoft, honestly, which is a wild place to be in. But they said that, so that within Microsoft there are all these investors, and they said the investors, quote, try to control the company with no usable knowledge or respect, saying that Microsoft raised concerns about the death of the boy, quote, or after Microsoft raised concerns about the death of the boy, quote, one of the investors suggested we make him appear older by giving him a mustache.
How would they have done that? Maybe he does.
He could have a mustache.
How would you be able to tell?
Yeah, they went on to be like, and so we did.
Yeah, look, there it is. It's right there on its face.
Notable also, of course, that before it got all this funding from Microsoft, that this game was primarily funded by grants from the Danish government.
Europeans, man.
I know.
Europeans and, like, Australians.
It's Spooky European Week here on the podcast.
I just mean they can get grants from their government.
Yeah. What a crazy concept.
To make art. What a crazy concept.
There weren't as many. I bet you there'll be more retrospectives on Limbo like next year. That's my guess for the 15th anniversary. There was not as much kind of like looking back at this game as I expected to find online.
I feel like whenever they actually start like marketing for their third game is when we'll see a lot of like Limbo inside look backs,
That makes sense to me.
Well, shall we talk about Banishers?
Spooky week. Here, talk this. Talk this spooky week.
As I said last week, half woman protagonist who's also sort of half a woman, kind of.
Is that how you think of ghosts?
Well, I don't think of all of that. They're sort of like half a person.
Sure.
They're like nobodies.
This is an interesting like peek into Emma's kind of like spirituality here.
aren't like they're like nobodies, aren't they?
Something like that. In this
are.
Universe, that does sort of seem to be what it is. Like we can sort of harvest souls and bring her back.
Yeah.
Anyway, Banishers Ghosts of New Eden is 2024.
I didn't even think about that. They're like making Kingdom Hearts to bring her back.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
Inspired by Kingdom Hearts.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a 2024 action RPG. It came out in February from Don't Nod, published by Focus for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. It's an action RPG. It's like a buddy detective investigator. It's a choice-based situation, etc., etc. And yes, it's spooky European because Don't Nod is a French studio.
Is that what you call Clickbait Boyfriend? Your buddy detective?
Yeah. It is.
Okay.
I do often introduce Clickbait Boyfriend as like, this is my buddy.
It is, it's a they're in a romantic relationship.
They are. I just meant it as like they're like it's sort of the buddy cop energy, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like it's romantic also. Yes, it's primarily romantic. I just was like, like a duo of detectives.
Yeah. After we've gotten through they're through the will they won't they. They are in a relationship.
That's right.
Buddy cops, yeah.
Yeah. We've skipped a few seasons.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, around the release of this game, there was some kind of report about like mismanagement at Don't Nod, which I was like, I wonder what is this in the context of American working conditions? I was like, that just sounds like a game studio.
I mean, that's the point of reporting on that stuff, though.
No, I know, but I was like, it was interesting to read it. I was like, oh, this just sounds sort of like what it sounds like it is working in games. But
Don't Nod does confuse me as a studio.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they've been very insistent, like, oh, we're working in the AA space, right? Mm-hmm. We're not a AAA studio, but they have like, so just recently they came out and said like the classic "Say It With Me" kids fell below our expectations.
Sure did.
For Jusant and Banishers.
We talked about Jusant. I was going to say recently, but
I played Jusant
maybe 6 months ago.
I played Jusant, and they came out within 6 months of each other, basically. And in that announcement, they said, okay, we're pausing 2 of our projects. And they have, like, 5 still going or something like that, I feel like.
They said in an interview, they're like, oh, we're a AA studio, we're working on 3 to 7 projects at a time. No, and he did say that includes things they're publishing, like they also publish.
That's fair.
So,
all right.
A little bit of murkiness there. But
it just is like, how many games are you working on? Because Banishers comes out of like this team that made Vampire, which I feel like we also talked about a very long time ago.
I thought that also, but it would have had to have been when it was a new game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like year 1 of the podcast. Yeah, so the memory is not strong.
Yeah. But so that's came out of that team, and then like Usant is another team, and then like the Life is Strange team is now releasing Bloomin' Records. Bloomin' Rage, Lost Records. I just mashed that together.
Bloomin' Records.
Next year.
Partnership with Outback Steakhouse.
So they're just it's a strange company to me.
Well, it's more like the strangeness of like AAA and AA don't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
Of it all.
Well, but I mean, what's actually interesting is because they're not AAA, right? Because AAA works on like one project in like 5 years now. So they're making like a ton of games that are all very different and happening at the same time is sort of what confuses me about them.
Yes. AAA, you have to have a 9-figure budget, I think is the rule.
Yeah.
It's
anyway,
so funny. No other like other than like theater in like New York City alone, I can't think of any other industry where it's like, we have AAA and we have AA and we have A. I mean, sports, I guess.
I don't think anybody says A.
I'm an A. I will. I should.
What's an A game?
A good one. Anyway, in Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, you play your ghost hunters, Antea Duarte, maybe, and Red Mac Wraith, and your pal calls you out to this New England town. It's 1695 for context, because there's
colonial New England.
Yes, town in New England. There's like a curse there that's made it permanently winter, so like just New England, am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it killed a bunch of people. Maybe less, just New England, am I right? You get there, your friend's already dead, you summon his ghost, he's like, y'all, it's bad. Like, there's a real bad curse here. And you go after that nightmare, and and this is going to sound like a spoiler, but as every single review I read made very clear when they discussed this plot beat, they were like, this is not a spoiler, it's the setup of the game.
Yes.
Which, like, 1, cool. 2, wild that like we just have to like that everybody felt like they had to say that or they would get flamed. But this is the setup of the game, and if all the reviews think this, then I too can think this. And Taya, who is the like master ghost huntress here, gets killed, and Red gets saved by a witch.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this is ghosty type world. So Red is able to reunite with Antea's ghost. And so they want to find her body, and early on you have to make the decision about if what you're striving for is to adhere to your Banisher principles of, working with her to allow her to get rid of this nightmare so that she can like pass on to the beyond, or if you're going to be using your powers for evil to, as Emma said, create Kingdom Hearts and resurrect Antea, even though it goes against everything that you stand for.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a spoiler because you can't even talk about the game without that context, right? You can't talk about like what you're doing in the game at all if you don't give that sort of setup. So you control both. You can control both Red and Antea. That's what it is, right? In combat, and you can sort of switch between realms to control them in different spots to sort of make your way through different storylines as well. So you'll be sort of constantly playing both of them and switching between them during times. And whilst you're pursuing like the main story, there's also a bunch of side stuff you can do around town where there's different people who are experiencing different kinds of hauntings. And so you make your way through these small stories, and at the end are often faced with various choices of, you can either help the spirit to ascend, which is essentially like good, or you can banish the spirit, which is saying, hey, you suck. Or you can punish the human that's involved in the haunting as well. So there's a few different choices that you can make at the end of a storyline in terms of what you want to do, both in terms of your own like moral judgment, right, on the situation, and on that decision that you've made. Because you have to like pick a certain number of those based on what your goal is, right? By helping spirits to like ascend, that will then give you the power to help Antea ascend. But if you're hoping to resurrect her, then you do have to punish the humans involved instead. So you have to try to make sure that you're doing enough to get the goal that you desire, while also like considering each situation. And the choices that you make in these also have an impact on the town. So it's definitely very much like an evolution of vampires' systems, where like who you drink blood from, for example, or who you kill around town can have an impact on sort of the environment around you.
Vampire, for those not familiar, it's Carlisle Cullen, the game, right? You're a doctor turned into a vampire, and you have to decide if you're gonna stay true to your doctor principles or drink a bunch of blood.
Yeah.
I do think that idea of making like a choice at the beginning of the game that you then have to like adhere to or not adhere to felt relatively unique to me. I couldn't think of very many or really any other games that invite you to make that big choice within the first couple hours and then like continue to make choices that might have you reevaluating that or that sort of thing.
I think that it's an interesting way to structure it. It definitely creates a different feeling of playing, I think, than like even like knowing that there's going to be a big choice at the end, right? Of already having made that choice before you've even really gotten a chance to like get to know people, right? Or think about your own position in the world or anything like that.
I think that's cool. It did seem a little polarizing in the reviews, how the kind of moral choices that you're making at the end of each of these kind of quote-unquote cases landed. There were definitely some people who were very affected by it and very like felt conflicted. And then I also read several reviews that were like, these were kind of like, it was kind of trite that we got to the end and it was this like really binary choice that I had to make.
I did read I read one interview with them on Polygon about a couple of different things, and I think one of the things they said is like there are a couple hauntings in there where there's like yeah, this guy sucks, or yeah, this guy sucks, right? Yeah. And then there's a few that are a little bit more complicated than that. So I do also wonder if it's a matter of just like, because it's made up of all these different short stories, the ones that you run into first, right? Or the ways that you approach certain ones first may color the rest of your experience, right? And there are some that might be better, that certainly are, right, better than others. And those ones will stick with you or not. But this Polygon interview was also mostly about like writing romance in games, and how there's not a ton of games that are like sort of like a scripted romance, right? Like right. There's a lot of ones where you are like, I want to romance this character.
Girl C.
Yes, Girl C. Asterion.
Yeah.
Girl C, also known as Asterion.
Yep.
But there's less where it's like, oh, like your character is in love with this character, right? And I thought it was interesting they were talking about, like, it's hard to just be like, hey, player, you're in love with this lady, and she's in love with you. There you go. So their sort of thought of that is by having you play both of them, it becomes more of like a very like a partner act, right? You feel connected to both of them and then therefore invested in their relationship.
Yeah, I think I read the same article and they talk a bunch in it about how, you know, because Antea is a ghost, right? It would have been really easy for it to sort of be like, well, you're really playing as Red and like Antea is your sidekick. Mm-hmm. Right, but they made like a real effort that, you know, she's always there in cinematics and when she's not speaking, that, you know, sort of the gameplay obviously is set up such that you're kind of switching between the two of them and they have different skills and you have to be using both of them. So that was interesting to read, especially in the context of an IGN review that I had read that referred to this game as part of a genre that they like termed the quote-unquote crevice crawler. I don't know if you saw this one.
No, I didn't.
Okay, well,
what is the crevice crawler?
Those third-person games with a serious story and slow pacing, where two people walk around and talk to each other in hushed tones in between combat encounters, and for some reason you spend a lot of time squeezing through crevices to get from place to place. So they were like, The Last of Us is this, God of War is this, right?
Sure.
Any number of these sort of like prestige-y AAA games. And it was interesting that in so many, to think about so many of those games where it's like, like you're playing as the dude and you've got like a daughter or a kid following you that is definitely the secondary character. Mm-hmm. And to take that paradigm and really make it more like, no, you are both of them. It's an interesting twist.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of, you could play Haven in co-op too, but it reminds me a little bit of Haven, which I think you played a little bit of.
I played some of. We weren't like so grabbed by Haven, but yes.
Yeah.
Also, the only other kind of like couple game that came to mind for me.
Yeah.
That's not true. Is this an It Takes
Two? Right.
Like...
Where do you put it on the where do you put I accidentally got my lover killed on the spectrum of like ran away together and very divorced?
Good question. Depends on what you decide at the end.
Yeah, I guess so.
They also talked in that interview about... So one thing this game tries really hard to subvert sort of facilitated by that opening choice. And we've talked about this on the show before, I think when we talked about morality systems in a side quest, is that even if you give the player the choice to be the quote-unquote bad guy, the vast majority of players will not take that choice.
Right, yeah.
And because this game sets you up with a choice at the beginning where, you know, you can opt into being the bad guy for, like, a reason that might make sense.
Yeah.
It then sort of tricks, hopefully, more players into making choices that they would not have made without that opening incitement. The developers were also apparently really tickled every time they watch a Twitch stream and somebody, like, has to struggle with a choice. They said, every time we watch a stream and someone puts down the gamepad, we say, yeah, we did it.
Yeah, I think that I can definitely see at least the logic. I'd be very curious to look at statistics for this game in the same way that, like, you know, Life is Strange has statistics and stuff. Yeah. But I do feel like you're given this goal, and to achieve this goal, you then have to take bad actions, right? Versus just like, you're just playing the game and you have the opportunity to be a huge jerk, right? For no particular reason, right?
Yeah.
It's like, there's not really like, you know, like a fixed objective there, right? Where you're like, oh, being a jerk here, I have to do this, right? Because it's my ultimate goal that's been, like, laid out by the game, not just like, I'm going to be a mean guy this playthrough, you know?
Yeah.
So I definitely see the logic there of allowing more opportunity for a player to do the bad, quote unquote, moral decision.
It's a clever way to encourage more role playing in the player.
Yeah.
That's something that some of these kind of like choice-based games sometimes lose, right? Where you just get into the thing of like, I want to get the ultimate good ending, or I'm doing something because I think it's funny.
Yeah.
And giving the player sort of a gameplay-based reason to make certain choices to be like consistent with the goal that you've chosen for your character, I think is a really interesting way of setting that up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, I do think that some of the gameplay elements of this were a little bit more hit or miss for people. It was hard for me to put my finger on exactly what it was, because I felt like it was something different for every reviewer. Some people were like, the combat kind of like, I got bored of fighting the same wolves over and over. And some people were like, the combat's the best thing. And some people really liked the sort of choiciness of it. And some people felt like they felt too binary. So it was interesting. It didn't really seem like... I thought when I read the sort of summary of the reviews that I was going to go in and it was going to be like, oh, everybody likes the story and everybody didn't like X. But it does seem like everybody reacted badly to a different element of sort of expected action-adventure gameplay. Not the same element, but something.
Yeah. It's interesting. I do think it's a game with like a few different things going on, and so maybe that's inevitable, right? Of if your player preference is to one thing or the other.
Right.
I did sort of see a trend too of like people who played Vampire were like, wow, what a step up in the combat.
Yeah.
So that might have also been a little bit of it.
True.
Of just like the comparison level, in that this was like a more involved system that was more interesting to play in general. And also, like, some people found enjoyment in, like, there being, like, complementary skills, right, between the two of them that you could sort of work together on.
But some people hated that there was a skill tree at all.
Yeah. I read a couple of reviews, it's like, there's sort of, like, a Metroidvania type element, right, of, like, you're blocked off from certain areas until Antea gets, like, a certain ghost skill, too. Which is, again, is just like another little extra genre that they've added to the genre mix. It does feel a little bit like a mashup, you know, if you think about it a little bit. It's like a good mashup, not like the ones we make.
Yeah, thoughtfully mashed.
It's like a thoughtful, interesting mashup, not a whatever we do.
There's one review in particular that I want to call out. The reviewer at Sports Illustrated just like seemed to really dislike this game.
Or Sports Illustrated?
Yeah. This is one of the first reviews that came out. I don't know why.
All right.
I mean, they liked the story, I think, but they were like, I really didn't like the mechanics of it at all. I felt like the choices were silly. So the way I found a way to care about this game is that I'll quote them. I became the second darkness of New Eden, the most prolific handbag thief the New World had ever known. They stole every purse, every handbag, everything they could find.
You know, you find your own fun sometimes, you know?
Exactly.
They were role-playing, like, a grieving process, you know?
Yeah. There are so many reviews that were like, oh, I hope we get a sequel to this because it's got a subtitle.
Yeah.
I don't think so, folks.
Not for a while, at least.
And it would have to be new characters, right? I mean,
yeah, but
yeah,
Banishers, right, is pretty. You can have the same sort of. They're not the only ones in the world, assumably.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, a lot of really interesting things going on in this game that seems to have just like something didn't get cooked quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Also find it really funny, it was originally supposed to release in November 2023, and they pushed it due to a crowded release window to February 2024.
I know. It's just impossible. It's been impossible for a while. There's been a lot of games I feel like are like, oh, I'm going to move this. They just did it again with Bloom and Rage because they were releasing too close to the new Life is Strange game. So they pushed it to February next year because they were like, we probably shouldn't release at the exact same time as Double Exposure.
Maybe not. Anyway, just too many games.
There really is too many games.
Every window is an intense sales window.
I know.
Well, are we ready to Monster Mash?
I'm ready to Monster Mash.
They did the mash.
Some ghosties. We gotta have some ghosties.
Yeah, it's gotta be spooky. Somebody's gotta be dead.
Just spooky, though, I think.
Yeah.
Spooky tinged.
There's a
horror.
duo element, right?
Sure.
Or like a trying to help someone who is dead element. Right?
True. Dead woman.
A boy character
dead woman in there.
trying to help a dead girl character.
The boy
might also be dead, but
boy's probably also dead in Limbo, to be fair. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. Maybe like you're a little boy.
Good.
And you've moved to a new place.
Okay.
But your room is haunted by the little girl former inhabitant.
Okay.
And it's like a coming of age romance.
Do we want that?
Which part do we want?
I guess I'm wondering if like how old are you envisioning these characters?
It like takes place over time. Like
Okay.
over a long time.
That's interesting. Okay.
So maybe they're like, I don't know, 10 at the start.
Uh-huh.
I guess the ghost also grows up. Let's not think about it too much.
Oh, right. That's maybe that does make it a little trickier.
I wasn't thinking about that. No, the ghost grows up too.
Wow, why?
She lives in the ghost world, right? She just, that's how it works in this world.
Okay, this is okay. I do feel like, unfortunately, like an important part of the success of any game is like sexy fan art, and I'm not loving our 10-year-old boy as like someone who's going to help us get some traction.
I don't think Limbo has any sexy fan art. Probably.
Sure, different era though.
Okay. People love sad fan art too, so it's okay.
Sure, you're right. More importantly, what are the mechanics of this game?
It's like a life sim adventure game.
Okay.
Not like life sim like The Sims. I don't know. It's just like it's like a Life is Strange game.
Nice, good. Great.
It's just off-brand Life is Strange.
Life's a little spooky.
Life's a little spooky sometimes.
Okay, trying different thing here. Could see doing like an Orpheus and Eurydice thing.
Okay.
Right? Except we gotta give Eurydice like a little more agency here.
Sure.
Maybe. Could be something interesting to like you have to solve puzzles with Eurydice, but like you can't ever see her. So that makes I don't know how exactly I would do this. I'm cooking something here that I think is a little underbaked. But it's like
sorry. I don't know why my brain went here. I just thought of like you get a game over screen and it's like you looked at your wife.
Yeah.
Like a Dark Souls game over screen, but it gives you like a little explanation of what you did. It's like
you took a little peek.
You saw your wife. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that maybe you as the player can't see her either, but that would be interesting. Like a puzzler where it's like if they are ever in eye shot of each other solving those puzzles, you fail.
It's kind of
eye shot's a word.
I mean, it's that part's not in this, but it's giving me Ico vibes.
Sure.
You know?
Limbo is definitely Ico inspired.
Yeah. Do you think Ico is Orpheus and Eurydice inspired?
Probably.
No, I like the idea of doing something with Orpheus and Eurydice just because that's fun. People like those guys. People are Orpheus and Eurydice fans.
People are Orpheus and Eurydice fans. I'm wishing I had like a better game mechanic for it, but we could probably have like cute little support conversations throughout too. I am worried that ultimately it's not a it's like, to be clear, it's not a roguelike.
Yeah.
You do not get a second chance.
You just get normal game over screens.
Yeah.
You don't start from the beginning. You're just like, you fricked up, Orpheus.
Unfortunately, I would have to decide at the end, like, here's, unfortunately, the end of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice is that she does not get out.
Well, we could do very, like it'd be very Limbo-inspired ending.
Ooh, I have an emotional puzzle-inspired ending, actually.
Okay.
It's a really hard puzzle at the end.
Okay.
And this is how we use gameplay as storytelling here.
Okay.
Ultimately, you discover that you so this might be something we could build into the game, actually. I know that we want our you looked at your wife Dark Souls screen, but I could see there being something where it's like, oh, if you look at her, she disappears, but like you're not gonna be able to finish the game without her, right? Like you actually can't get out without her. So like maybe you can look at her in the game and she disappears, but like then you get stuck, right? And I don't really know what happens then. You call upon, I don't remember if Orpheus has any gods like supporting him, but like you eat the pomegranate and you go back, right? Something like that. I don't know. But at the very end of the game, there's a very hard puzzle. You're like so close to the end, and with some sad piano music and a final something, you have to, like, you're both gonna be stuck there, right? So the only way to get out is if you solve the puzzle together in a way where you have to look at her and she disappears and then you escape and then the credits roll.
Sure.
I think I'd win Game of the Year.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think Xbox Live Arcade should come calling for this one.
Yeah, exactly. From the past.
Yeah.
Please send this back to 2011 when it belongs. I don't mean that in a denigrating way. I just mean that we released a lot of those.
Yes, it could be moody and evocative, and the idea of you look at her at the end and she disappears, and then you walk out into the sunlight with a single tear dripping down your face. Does feel like it could have sold 10 million copies in 2011.
Yeah, exactly. Before The Last of Us invented narrative.
Well, this is
when people are like,
this is a myth.
This isn't. They shouldn't talk to each other, right?
Before The Last of Us invented dads.
Yeah. That doesn't make any sense, actually. That has nothing to do with the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, unless I'm missing something about that
it
story.
Can exist before that, because it's really, there's no dads in this game.
Oh, right. Okay. That's great. I think we did good.
I could also do it, if we wanted to be a little more progressive, Orpheus could be the woman and Eurydice could be the man.
Is that more progressive?
She lives at the end. That way. And everybody gets to go, yeah, you're free, girl. We can have think pieces about that.
Okay.
Well, we've got some options here. Alternately, we could just invent a sort of Nintendo Labo thing where you have a big stick and you limbo under it.
Sure.
They probably have sticks in Banishers at some point.
I'm sure there are sticks on the ground.
Well, listeners, do you believe that Emma picked these games at random, or do you think that she curated an October spooky season lineup for us? Have you played Limbo? And what do you think is the right price for a game that is somewhere between 2 to 5 hours, depending on how bad you are at it? Do you want to see more games that make you commit to a choice early on and roleplay that choice? Do you want to see more games? Are we about to be in an era of boyfriend-girlfriend games? And how many of those games will the girlfriend die? If you have thoughts on any of this or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, or read our blog featuring long-running series, Clickbait Boyfriend, and Split Screen. But most importantly, if you enjoyed the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This.
Next week is 6 weeks in gaming.
Woohoo! More Limbo! Some Final Fantasy! I really thought I was about to finish 1,000 Times Resist, which I'm sure is the point, but I'm only halfway through, per the chapter numbers that I Googled.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to talk to Emma about it on the show tomorrow. And I was like, no, I'm not. These names are new.
When I played it, there were like 3 times where I was like, oh, it's going to end now. And then it was like, no, we're not. And I was like, good choice, actually.
This was a moving experience. I enjoyed this. And now I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yep. And 2 weeks from now, for our old game, we're going to be talking about Hotel Dusk, room 215. And for our new game, we're going to be talking about Tekken 8.
All right.
So you can take that as proof that I do not curate, in fact.
You say that, and then I'll go look at it, and I'll be like, oh my god, the parallels.
If you find any parallels, let me know.
Well, look forward to that. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. Emma, give us a spooky send-off.
Still wear your masks, listeners.
Ooh.